Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cat Chats, the podcast by me, Coach Kathy Richardson. I'm a certified weight loss coach here in New Brunswick, Canada, and I've lost 150 pounds, and I'm here to help you meet and maintain your weight loss goals too. And today I'm talking just to the bariatric peeps. This one's just for you. If you aren't a bariatric post-op and you still want to know a little bit about intermittent fasting, go ahead and keep listening. But otherwise, this one's for you guys. And on that note, if you want to see more bariatric specific content, please let me know. I'm deciding whether I should niche down to just bariatrics or whether I should keep my blanket weight loss in general still. Just let me know what your thoughts and feelings are on that, and let me know in the comments down below. And I do want to get out of the way that I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV. Anything said on this podcast or in any of my YouTube videos is never to take the place of medical advice, your doctor, your bariatric team. I'm not considered a medical expert, and let's just get that out of the way, okay? So what I am going to do is I'm going to tell you all about what I did to lose and maintain 150 pounds. This is what I like to call an N=1 experiment. I'm just sharing with all of you what I did to make me successful. It's kind of frustrating at times because my methods haven't always been conventional. But I feel like I might have just been a little bit of a pioneer in the area of fasting when it comes to bariatrics because, up until like 2 years ago, nobody was even really talking about intermittent fasting, let alone intermittent fasting with bariatrics. And, maybe that's what made you land here is because you saw the title, or maybe you searched bariatrics and intermittent fasting. And if you do that, there's not a lot that comes up. And unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation about fasting. There's a lot of disinformation about fasting. I always used to joke even before I was a bariatric patient and when I was just doing intermittent and extended fasting on my own before I even knew I was going to have bariatric surgery, that rule number one of fasting, it's like Fight Club. You don't talk about Fight Club and you just don't talk about fasting because it seems to just bring up so many thoughts and feelings from people who really don't know what they're talking about. And unfortunately, sometimes it brings up some thoughts and feelings in people who do know what they're talking about. It seems to be that fasting can be a little bit of the boogeyman of the dieting world and of the dietitian's world. And I've met some dietitians who are very pro intermittent fasting, and they think that it's a very important tool that can be added to the bariatrics toolbox. And then I've met some other people that swing on the other end of the gate and just think it's the devil, and it just is nothing but disordered eating. And so I find like with the disordered eating camp and then the intuitive eating camp who just want you to eat the Oreos if that's what you're feeling that day, I think y'all need to come into the middle a little bit, or that's where I'm choosing to. You do what you want to do. I'm not your gatekeeper, and I'm not your boss, and I'm not your babysitter. I have chosen to come into the middle of those two camps. I don't mean to dispel or poo-poo disordered eating. That's very serious, and it absolutely happens in the bariatric world more than people realize, and it happens with overweight people more than people realize. You do not need to be thin to experience disordered eating. There are many, many, many overweight, obese, and morbidly obese people who suffer from disordered eating, just like there are many, many, many thin and healthy weight people who still suffer with overeating by times. So there's just so much gobbledygook surrounding a lot of these like blanket terms when it comes to weight loss and dieting and bariatrics and eating in general. So I guess it's kind of one of my goals with this podcast and with these videos is to just cut the crap and let's just look at facts-based evidence. I'm going to absolutely look at my own experience. And like I said before, I'll say it again. I know you don't have time to listen to hours of podcasts and to watch all these bariatric doctors on YouTube and to read all the books that I've read. I've done a lot of legwork because I know most other people don't have the time to do that. And that's the information that I'm trying to provide to you in a quality way. And it's also a lot of that information that helped me develop my own methodology as a weight loss coach. And on that note, let's just get started and let's start talking about fasting as a bariatric patient. One thing I do find that's awfully interesting is you don't ever feel the need to ask permission from anybody to eat all day, or to eat 6 small meals a day, or to eat 8 to 10 small meals a day, or to graze. But the second you even consider restricting what you eat, even a tiny bit, even if it's cutting out that nighttime snack and or delaying your breakfast by an hour or two. It's like, whoa, well, let's just get that cleared with every doctor on the planet. So if you want to get that cleared, you go right ahead. But it's just a little ironic, isn't it? It's when it comes to overconsumption, we don't feel like we need permission. But when it comes to restriction of any kind, it's like, well, better get that cleared. Why is that? That's something we need to kind of sit on and figure out a little bit. So right out of the gate, though, let's just get one thing clear. Fasting after bariatric surgery is not for everyone. If you do have a history of disordered eating, fasting just isn't going to be for you, whether you've had bariatrics or not. If you're pregnant or nursing, fasting is not for you. If you're a post-op bariatric that is 9 months or under in your journey, fasting should not even be in your wheelhouse right now. That's your 9 months, your honeymoon, to really get your eating dialed in and well. That is when you want to be establishing the very healthy eating habits that are going to continue the rest of your life. And so you need to learn how to eat properly as a bariatric patient during those first few months. And that's when your most rapid weight loss is going to happen. Very good things happen during those 9 months. And you don't need to be worrying about intermittent fasting at that point. You really got to protein forward meals, focus on protein. You really should be logging and tracking all your food, all your macros, all your calories, your water. You want to maybe start moving your body in a healthy manner. But really, those first 9 months is the school of bariatrics, and you do need to follow, and you always need to follow what your team and your doctors have told you and your dietitian and whatever. But for whatever reason, once 9 months comes, and this was true for me, it's true for hundreds of people that I've seen talk about this subject and people that I've talked to myself, at 9 months, you've got about 3 more months before that 1 year follow-up appointment with your doctor. And as one person so eloquently said, this is really when the hits the fan. And you think like, oh, if you were not even remotely close to where you wanted to be at 1 year, you start panicking a little bit at 9 months. And maybe that's what brought you to this podcast or this YouTube video. It's because you're 9 months post-op, you're 10 months post-op, and your goal looks nowhere in sight right now. Panic can be setting in, fear can be setting in. You might wonder if this just didn't work for you, or if you're just too broken for bariatrics to work for you. You might be having some doubt as to whether, this was even worth it. You might be having some regret. Or you might even have had regain at this point and old habits are slipping back in. There's a bunch of reasons why people really start coming unglued during month 9. And it's also, probably not so coincidentally, that's right when a lot of people's first really, really significant stall happens. It seems like from months 1 to 3, there's very rapid weight loss. And then months 3 to 6, it's still pretty steady. Things can slow down a little bit for months 6 to 9. But for many people at month 9, the brakes hit for a little bit. And we know that there's set points. We know, we can do a bunch of different podcasts about why stalls happen after bariatric surgery. But for whatever reason, for the majority of people, something funky might start happening around month 9. Me personally, I completely stalled from months 9 to months 12. And I didn't start losing again until month 13. And I didn't have podcasts like this. I didn't have Facebook groups to reach out to. There weren't many when I started this journey, even not that long ago. And I just found that I blamed myself, and maybe you are too. And so, I didn't know that there were certain things like resets and how lipoprotein lipase affects our weight loss. And, there's a bunch of biochemical, neurotransmitter things that happen, and even physiological things that happen to us as we lose weight on this journey. And I wish someone would have told me in the beginning, and again, I'm going to file this away for things I wish I knew before I had bariatric surgery. That will be a podcast and a video, is that you need to have a long-term focus with this. I think because we hear so many statistics like you're going to lose this much weight by 3 months and this much weight by 6 months. And if you haven't lost half your weight by 6 months, you're not going to be a successful patient. There's so much out there. But the reality is that even at month 9, you are very early on into this journey, and maybe take the pressure off a little bit. So at month 9, things are starting to maybe pause. I also I had lost enough weight that I felt good enough to actually try the Couch to 5K program. And so I started training for a 5K. And at that point, I was gaining muscle. I was definitely dialed into my protein, and I actually gained 8 or 9 pounds when I first started running. And some of that's inflammation and due to muscle use and muscle recovery and different things. And it did eventually come off. And then by month 13, I started to lose weight again. But another thing I started doing around month 10 was implementing intermittent fasting again. Now let's back up a little bit, because you heard me say in the beginning of this that I did fasting prior to my surgery, and that's absolutely true. I started fasting in 2019 was the first time I really gave it a go, and it was like the fall of 2019. And then all through 2020, I really did a lot of fasting. Did a lot of intermittent fasting and extended fasting. And I followed all the big gurus that you can follow, like Dr. Jason Fung and Dr. Eric Berg and Dr. Mindy Pelz. There was, quite a few people who were, the year 2000 seemed to be the year of intermittent fasting. I don't know if the pandemic brought this out of people, or if just finally conventional wisdom was catching up with the science. But, it's had a lot of traction the last couple of years. And it worked for me. It did really well. And I actually lost 45 pounds out of the 150 that I've lost before my surgery. And I did that through intermittent fasting. And if you've seen some of my other programs, I did do the 75 hard challenge too, but I actually wasn't able to fast a whole lot during that, just because it was so grueling that I needed more food and more sustenance. But having said that, I probably didn't know how to fast for exercising too. And again, that's another podcast. But let's back that train up. So the point is that I was very well versed, very well educated in, and did implement both intermittent fasting and extended fasting prior to my surgery. Once I had my surgery, I totally hit the pause on that. And I followed I'm like a dog with a bone, and I am a rule follower somewhat until it's necessary to break the rules. And I followed my bariatric team's advice for probably the first 6 months, and then I was one of those slowdowns at 6 months. I was never a fast loser. My weight loss averaged under a pound a week this entire journey, and I wasn't tempted to fast until like month 9, month 10, and I found Dr. Duck Vong on YouTube, and he's one of the bariatric surgeons that's very pro intermittent fasting. And kind of like when I heard him say it was okay, I'm like, okay, it's okay. And since then, there's a lot of other ones too. It's not just him. But anyways, I did my own research, and then I did start fasting around month 10. But between month 6 through month 10, I was having those 9-month feelings. I was definitely feeling like a failure. I was wondering if, I'd gotten all I was going to get out of my surgery, different things like that. So I became more desperate as the months went on, and the weight didn't come off very fast at all. But that's all right. So again, if you're bariatric and you're here, I'm basically right now speaking to those of you who have had vertical gastric sleeve and gastric bypass. Those are the two procedures that right now I'm most confident in speaking to, and that I've heard most other bariatric surgeons speak about in relation to intermittent fasting. If you're a duodenal switch or a SADI or even a mini bypass, those absolutely affect your body's ability to absorb nutrients on a whole different level compared to bypass or VSG. So I'm not even going to speak to any of you today. That's going to require more homework on your end, and I'm not comfortable, even though I'm not giving medical advice. I don't even want to talk about fasting with any of y'all right now. So I'm speaking today specifically to post-op bariatrics who have either had a vertical gastric sleeve, VSG as we like to call it, or a sleeve, or a bypass. So having said that, if you are in that bubble of you're 10 months out, you're maybe getting a little frustrated, and you're just curious, let's just talk about some things, and I'm going to talk about what I did. And so the first thing I did was I realized like the 6 small meals a day, that wasn't working for me anymore. I eat enough quality protein and have enough quality protein sources. I didn't need to be eating like every hour so I could hit my protein macros at the end of the day, or my calories. And on that note too, even when you are intermittent fasting as a bariatric, it's still important that you do hit your macros. It's still important that you do remain within a certain calorie range. And I think that's where the fear comes from. And I think that's where the misinformation comes from. People hear fasting and they immediately freak out and think you're just going to starve yourself. And that is so not true. You know, if you're doing a 16 and 8 regime of fasting, or maybe even you have a 10-hour eating window and you're only fasting for 14 hours, that is all kinds of time to hit 90 grams of protein a day. More than enough time. And that's more than enough time for you to hit your calorie goal of the day. You know, I actually didn't count calories. The only thing I really counted on this whole journey, besides like the first 3 months, was my protein. That was the only thing I cared about. I knew if I was hitting my protein by default, I would be hitting my calorie goals. I don't care about fat. I still don't care about fat. I am, have a BMI of like 19.5 right now, and I have not counted a fat gram once on this entire journey. If you need to, and if your doctor recommends you to, that's fine. But I just find that even though it's a calorically dense macronutrient, it's not the same beast that carbohydrates are. And I'm not anti-carbohydrate, but I do find carbohydrates require a little bit more of my attention and a little bit more discretion with how, when, and why I choose to ingest in them. So if you're that bariatric and you're 10 months out and you've got this cleared with your doctor and you're just searching YouTube or this podcast to kind of find out about things, this is how I started. I started out cutting out that evening snack. I didn't need it. It was giving me heartburn, which I was really frustrated to even have to deal with reflux after having my hiatal hernia fixed during my vertical sleeve surgery. And I just had done enough research and I knew that it did affect my quality of sleep. And we know from previous podcasts and videos that I've done that sleep is a huge part of our weight loss journey. And I wasn't willing to lay that on the altar of having a snack at night while watching TV with my husband. So I replaced my nighttime snack with something that wouldn't elicit an insulin response and that didn't have calories. And that was usually tea or water or meal or something. And I found I was completely satisfied. That wasn't a big give. It wasn't a huge sacrifice. It wasn't like this big, oh, look at me, I'm not having a nighttime snack now. It really wasn't that big of a deal. So I knew the next step to lengthening that fasting window was to just delay breakfast by a little bit. And that's really where the magic happens, because once we hit that 12-hour window, after it's been 12 hours since we've had anything to eat at all, any caloric substance at all, that's really when autophagy starts kicking in. And autophagy was really important to me, not only because I have multiple sclerosis and I wanted all the benefits of the cellular reset and the healing properties that comes with autophagy, but loose skin was a concern for me. As I lost more and more weight, I started to have more and more loose skin. But that's when I doubled down and was really going at it with my exercise and with my fasting. And I will say, since 10 months out, I've fasted this entire time. And I'm over 2 years out now. My doctor knows, my dietitian knows, my family doctor knows. Everybody is fine with it. Everybody's happy with my numbers. My blood work is awesome. And I absolutely attribute my success to intermittent fasting above and beyond anything else besides having the surgery itself. It has been just as integral of a part of my success. And, the further along I go and the more bariatrics I meet, I realize there's a lot that never get to goal. Or they look at me and they say, I wish I could have lost my weight the way you did, or I lost my weight for a minute, but then it came back on again. And it's just a tool that's missing from a lot of people's toolboxes. It is a tool that does not belong in everybody's toolbox, but if it is appropriate for you, it might be something you want to consider if you are not happy with the results that you had. Because guys, let's be honest, we know this. Obesity is a multifaceted disease, and it requires a multifaceted approach. Just having bariatric surgery is not going to be enough for the majority of the people that have bariatric surgery to meet and maintain their goals. So that means we need to explore other options. And that's becoming more and more okay to say, because it seemed like for a while you were just a pariah, why would you even say that? You had surgery, that's good enough. Statistics tell us it's not. 80% of people who have the surgery are going to have regain, and 50% are going to regain all of their weight back. So clearly, just having surgery is not good enough. And that's also why we're seeing some doctors implementing the use of GLP-1 meds now. And that was a big no-no to say a couple years ago. And now it's becoming very normal. And no wonder, because if just surgery was enough, we wouldn't need to explore anything else. We wouldn't have these 9-month post-ops freaking out because they're nowhere close to their goal. We wouldn't have those 80% and 50% percentages. So I'm happy to say that this is a great time to have had bariatric surgery, because these alternative methods, in addition to that work in tandem with your surgery, are becoming more and more mainstream to talk about. More and more dietitians are versed in it. More and more bariatric surgeons are versed in it, and they're speaking out about it, and they're speaking out in a positive manner. I wouldn't in good conscience even make this video if I thought that it was going to be harmful for me, let alone anyone else. But I'm in the longevity game here, guys. This is, I want to live my best life, the longest life I can, feeling the best I can, and looking the best I can. And so if this was harmful, I wouldn't do it. And I certainly wouldn't recommend anybody else do it. And again, I'm recommending you talk to your surgeon to see if this is right for you. But on my journey, here's some things that I've noticed with using this tool in my toolbox in addition to my surgery. Is number one, I feel my restriction again. And I was starting to not, because let's go back to another thing I wish I knew before I had bariatric surgery. And that was that you're going to feel hungry again, and you're going to feel it sooner than you realize. And I remember thinking I was broken. Something was wrong with me, because at that 6-month mark, I was getting belly growls, and I'm like, what the heck? I had that part of my stomach cut out that makes ghrelin. I shouldn't be having that ghrelin, gremlin, growling in my belly, but I did. And it's because it's normal. You're supposed to feel hungry again. And sometimes some of us handle that better than others. Some of us respond to the very triggers of hunger better than others. And some of us lose our restriction from this surgery very, very quickly, because we're all different. We all make different amounts of hormones. We all had different surgeries. We all had different surgeons. We all had different bougie sizes. I mean, there's so many reasons why some of us are going to feel our hunger sooner than others. But what I can absolutely tell you, as my N=1 experience, that I feel my restriction better on the days that I intermittent fast. And I said before, I've been doing this since 10 months out. There are some days I don't. I absolutely take some days off from fasting, especially if it's one of my 20% days, if I'm doing that 80-20 rule. Fasting is not a punishment for bad food eaten, and food is not a reward for good fasting. They are completely separate of each other. Fasting is not a punishment. Food is not a reward. So let's get that out of the way too. But for that reason, sometimes I'm on vacation or whatever. I don't always fast, but I fast probably 80% of the time, if not more. It might even be like another 80-20 instance. And it's probably more than 80% if I feel better that way. And I don't need to justify why I'm doing it. I'm just trying to explain why I do it. So another reason why I've chosen to keep this tool in my toolbox is because I've seen the success that it can do. Even when I went to go have my skin removal after losing 150 pounds, my plastic surgeon said, I don't see many people who have lost as much weight as you have that have such little loose skin. 7 pounds sounds like a lot, but if you've ever seen my before and afters, I got pretty lean, and I was able to get down to just skin and not a lot of fat and skin. It was literally just skin he was removing because of autophagy. That was a huge part in the success of my skin and my skin's ability to bounce back. It's been a huge part in, even the facial wrinkling and things. And, I could sit here and pick myself apart on this camera, but I can't deny that the benefits of autophagy with my skin are very noticeable. And here's the cool thing. I was severely insulin resistant before I had this surgery. Fasting is a very effective way to help heal insulin resistance and therefore prevent type 2 diabetes and a bunch of other metabolic disorders that happen as a result of insulin resistance. When we are insulin resistant, that insulin is broken. It's not working well. That's why our body has to keep pumping more and more and more out, because what got sent out isn't getting it done anymore. And as a result, we actually don't absorb our nutrients as efficiently. So as we become less and less insulin resistant, that insulin starts working better. It's more efficient. Therefore, we actually absorb more nutrients again. So it's all well and fine to take all these expensive vitamins and to eat all this high quality food, but if you're not accessing it once it's broken down and into your body, you're kind of working against yourself. So that's another huge benefit that I chose to continue with intermittent fasting, is because I want to get the most bang out of my buck when I do eat. And when I eat during my window, I'm still eating protein forward. I'm eating quality protein sources as much as I can afford to. And I am still taking vitamins. We know that vitamins go hand in hand for life as a bariatric, but I'm just glad to know that I'm actually accessing the benefits of that. And my health is a result of that. Like, you see that. I've been very healthy since I've had this surgery. And another reason, so we have sleep, we have feeling your restriction, it's helping with weight management. It just makes me have a plan for the day. And as a weight loss coach, I think that's very important, because we know if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And so the night before when I go to bed, I set up my parameters for how long I intend to fast the next day. And again, that's very flexible depending on if something unexpected happens, like being invited out to dinner or out to breakfast or something. I always keep it flexible, but for the most part, it's just part of me staying structured. And I do think that's very important to your success, whether you've had bariatric surgery or not. But on your weight loss journey, it is important to have a plan. And so fasting helps become part of my plan. And it makes me super intentional when I do eat. When I open my eating window, it's usually an 8-hour window. Sometimes it's a 10-hour window. Sometimes it's a 6-hour window, because again, sometimes I'm not hungry and I can push that a little further. Most times I'm opening my window around 10 or 11 a.m., which that's not so offensive. Like, so many people are like, oh my gosh, you go 16 hours without eating? Well, yeah, I eat an awesome supper with my husband at 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and then I don't eat again until like 10 the next morning, but I get up and have my coffee first anyway. That is very appropriate, and I'm still getting all of my nutrition in. I'm just delaying it by an hour or two so that my body can reap the rewards of autophagy and all that cellular healing that's happening. So I hope that answers some questions. And just a couple of little tips here. When you are talking to your doctor or your bariatric team about fasting, some of you, depending on if you had a hiatal hernia, if you are on a PPI, or if you take Tecta or something, if you take anything for heartburn, some doctors are going to recommend that you take something to coat the stomach during that time that you aren't eating food. So I do get up and I take my Nexium in the morning. I'm going to have to take a Nexium for life unless they come out with something better, but that's just what my experience has been. Another thing is the importance of electrolytes. I really wish bariatric doctors would talk about electrolytes more. I can't tell you how many times I see people during their 2-week or 4-week or 3-week pre-op, they're getting headaches and leg cramps, and they're going into a severe state of ketosis because of their pre-op diet, and they're pounding all this fluid to them, and they're having weakness and dizziness and muscle cramps and headaches, and a little bit of salt would help with that. Again, I'm not a surgeon. I don't play one on TV. I just wish we could be having the electrolyte conversation more than we are, which is basically none. So if you're a post-op bariatric and you're pounding that water and you're eating that protein like you're supposed to, you may or may not be in ketosis depending on what your nutritionist plan is for you. Electrolytes are super important because ketosis by default is a diuretic. Drinking a bunch of water is going to deplete your electrolytes, just like that diet being diuretic will. And so then you go add fasting into that, which also can deplete electrolytes. It's just super important that you supplement some. I personally love the brand LMNT. It's pronounced Element, and it has all of the electrolytes that you need, one little packet for the day, and it feels great. Another great thing you can do is take a swig of dill pickle juice. Pink Himalayan sea salt under the tongue is a great way to get some electrolytes in. There's even oral capsules you can take. Talk to your physician, explore this, but I'm telling you, a lot of people give up on fasting way too soon because they didn't feel good because they didn't supplement their electrolytes, and it's just such an easy fix, and it's a shame when that baby gets thrown out with that bathwater. And finally, we already touched on this a little bit when I said that fasting isn't a punishment for food. Don't ever think that you can outfast a bad diet. That is going to land you in the realm of disordered eating. You cannot eat like crap all day and then fast the entire next day and think you've got this. That is not how this works. One needs to complement the other, not be a punishment for the other or a reward. So just make sure that your diet is never going to be more important than it is as a post-op bariatric. Whether you choose to intermittent fast or not, you need to be dialed into your nutrition big time. And if you're having trouble with that, talk to your team, talk to me, do some research on your own. But it's very important that as a post-op bariatric, your nutrition is on point at least 80% of the time. And if you're going to restrict a little tiny bit, and I don't even like the word restrict. I like Jen Stevens has that book called Delay, Don't Deny. That's absolutely my philosophy when it comes to intermittent fasting. I'm not denying myself. I'm just delaying a little bit in the morning, and then I'm, enjoying my supper and a little bit of dessert after supper so that I don't feel the need to go snack later when I really don't need it. So just know that nutrition, as always, fasting or not, Ozempic or not, bariatric surgery or not, nothing trumps good nutrition. So we can do all kinds of more videos and podcasts about fasting if you want to. I don't want to talk to myself. I do that enough in my own head during the run of a day. I really want to put out information that you as a weight loss patient or as a weight loss surgery patient are interested in. So let me share what's in the Cat Chat brain and put it out there for you, and just let me know what you'd like to hear next. We've got some special guests coming up in the next couple of podcasts, and we have some awesome videos. If you're not a member of my Facebook group, it's a great support group. It's called Down 150 Pounds with Coach Kathy, and that's also the name of my YouTube channel, where you can learn all kinds of fast protein hacks and snacks and different ways that you can protein load during your meal. All kinds of good stuff going on. So thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. Share with a friend. That's the best thing you can do to make this worthwhile for me, is to just get this information out there and share it. And I hope I see you again really soon. Bye.